Thriving in today's fast-paced world of change and disruption requires innovation. Inside Outside Innovation is the podcast that explores the ins and outs of innovation with raw stories, real insights, and practical advice from the best and brightest in the world of startups and innovation. Each week, we'll bring you the latest ideas in lean startup, design thinking, corporate venture capital, and more. Now, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. We've got an exciting interview today with Eric Broekhuizen, who's the Chief Operating Officer and Program Director of an accelerator called HighTechXL up in Eindhoven area in the Netherlands. But it's way more than an accelerator, as you're going to learn. Eric has an interesting career that took him through a long journey at Philips, then into venture capital, and now for the last several years helping hardware startups continue to accelerate their growth and production in the Netherlands. But it isn't just startups from that area. They're attracting startups from all over the world because they have a unique approach to putting the startups on a campus with 140 other companies. And what it's produced now is some amazing startups and some amazing corporate collaboration of the likes that now Intel, Amazon, Medtronic all have presence up in that area due to successful acquisitions. So hope you enjoy this interview with Eric. Let's get into it. And Eric, what is your role with these accelerators?
Yeah, so I lead the program here in Eindhoven, as well as I take care of the operations in general. Next to the acceleration programs we're running, the last year we've also started to use quite a bit of the methodology we use for startups, which is lean startup and things that are commonly known also for bigger corporations. And that expansion is currently going on. Not only working with young startups, but also with the bigger innovative startups companies as well.
Interesting. And so, are you finding a strong need or demand from corporations to learn what these startups are doing?
Yes, we do.
And how do you translate it? Because obviously corporations move at a very different speed. They have different resources. There are different bureaucracies that happen. How do you change or modify your approach to make it effective with these corporations?
Well, but basically to try to keep as much of the atmosphere of what startup life is about in the business discussions we're having with these bigger corporations teams as well. So we really work with teams. And those teams should actually be able and be empowered to do quite a bit on their own. And then basically we coach the teams. And what we say, if you have your customer traction arranged, hardly ever a manager will all of a sudden then stop you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So go out and talk to this customer and validate what your proposition is and see what kind of value you're actually bringing to customers. And based on that, you will have a very strong story. And then when you need to explain to management or even the board what you're up to, hardly ever you will get problems. In most cases, actually, the board will be very enthusiastic to see that so much business development is going on that level and will support you.
Sure. So with all this work with startups and with corporations, we're seeing a lot of trends where people are trying to mash these together. They're trying to make them collide. Are you guys seeing anything in the Netherlands or in Europe? Are you facilitating any of this interaction between the corporations and startups?
Yeah, we do. So our startup programs are actually funded by a few big corporations that are close to us. In the Netherlands, that's ASML, that's Philips. Both here from this region, as well as EY, of course, well-known top accountancy firm in the world. It's also ABN AMRO Bank, a Dutch bank. It's the HighTech Campus organization. We're here on a business campus where about 140 companies are based and more than 10,000 people actually work on a daily basis. So we're in the midst of all that. The Regional Development Organization also supports us, as well as the NTS Group. So these corporations help us to finance the program. But there's a lot more to it. Actually, what they also do, they help out with reflecting on the different business models that people have. They help out assessing technologies. They help out doing introductions wherever necessary to potential customers or partners or suppliers or what have you. And in some cases, actually, they might become partner or customer themselves. And that helps a lot because of the fact that things can really speed up by warm introductions. That's one. And secondly, especially when these more formal relationships are established, it really adds to the credibility of what the startup is about. And credibility is very valuable because it basically helps out to reduce the risk that any startup has.
Absolutely. Now, there's some people out there, when we think about this corporate and startup collaboration, there are some that are charging that for really disruptive technologies and ideas, corporations can't move fast enough, and so they need to partner with startups to be able to make that innovation. What do you think? Can corporations really create disruptive new technologies and innovations, or do they need to rely upon startups?
I think both is important. Our view is that it's very good to always be very open on what's happening around you. So if you're a big corporation, we would advise really to watch closely what's going on in the startup environment, and especially in the environment, in the business segments that you're involved in yourself, logically. So we're very much about that. But it doesn't say that it's impossible to, within a corporation, develop a new technology that is disruptive indeed. And I think that happens as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the first things that comes up when I share that exact idea with some of our corporate partners, it seems like they always bring up intellectual property issues, right? They say, well, how am I going to protect any IP that's generated out of this? Is that the right mentality to take to this open innovation approach, or what would you respond to those people who have their concerns about trying to do collaborative building with startups or with corporations?
I would certainly advise people to think about their IP strategy for sure. So, to move into the domain of open innovation and collaboration with all sorts of parties without thinking about IP, I think would be foolish. So I think it's good to think about it, but then that doesn't automatically mean that you need to build a wall around yourself and protect everything, because in the end you can be so protective that you don't create the value anymore that others are creating by collaboration, and then you're basically protecting an empty shell. Right, so it's important to strike the right kind of balance between protection as well as innovation, and nowadays innovation in the open world that we're having, as well as the global communication that has been enabled the last couple of decades, which is of course changing a lot of ways of working that we were used to earlier on. I think it's very important to be able to collaborate and to innovate jointly with others, but keeping in mind a solid IP approach for your company.
Sure. If you had to advise them to, in general, fall on one side of the fence or the other, either protect or be open, which do you think will be a more sustainable long-term strategy? Obviously, knowing that you have to protect and you have to have a good IP strategy, but should I have a bent more towards one or towards the other?
It depends a bit. In general, corporations have something to lose because they have revenues, they have many employees, they have a customer base, etc., etc. So there is something to lose. What you see sometimes is that because of that, protection starts to play a bigger role than it should. Basically protecting the history, but not taking care of the future well enough. So my general comment would then be, try to be more open.
Sure. Thank you, Eric. I want to go back to what you mentioned before about the campus. And it sounds like that's a pretty dynamic community that you're in with that many employees and that many companies. Can you share a little bit more about the benefits on being located in such a diverse space?
What it really helps with having that many people here with 140 companies, what really helps is that it's very easy to have a face-to-face discussion. And no matter what kind of electronic communication we can have, face-to-face interaction really helps with building trust.
Do you have any stories that you can share of any examples of how being located on that campus was maybe the changing or turning point, or just having access to those people is what really helped propel a particular company or startup?
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah. So actually, one of the startups in our current program that has a device that works with a device, a medical device, ultrasound device that Philips is actually marketing. So because of that connection, it's very easy to work with several different people within the Philips organization from that startup's perspective to actually check how jointly that business can be further developed. Now that's a lot easier when you're close by. You know what you're doing and you value each other's position.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about your accelerators now. I think a lot of our listeners are familiar with a more traditional 90 days Techstars or Y Combinator style accelerator. Yours focus on hardware exclusively, or just the majority of it is hardware?
Yeah, that's our central point. And that starting point, hardware, advanced technology, and even better, the combination of both is what we're really good at in this region. So many of the companies we have here, but also the university downtown is really good at that stuff. We have leading companies. ASML is supplying tools to the semiconductor industry with 85% market share globally. Having Intel, Samsung, TSMC as their major customers, and these are 100 million or 150 million kind of tools a piece. So with that, there's many subsystems that actually are built by suppliers as well, and all these suppliers are basically driven to an excellent level. Now that's supplier base, and some of that is very nearby, some of that is also further away, for instance in the US or wherever. But quite a few of those suppliers are nearby. That supplier base is of the highest quality in the world. Mm-hmm. And to tap into that basically means that you're playing on the highest level. Now, if we would have an accelerator program that is very similar to other accelerator program, we probably would be good. But we don't think that good is good enough in the world. You need to be excellent.
Sure.
By focusing on that hardware as a central point, we basically know that we can be excellent, and that's why we have that strategy.
Eric, I want to talk a little bit about your background and some of the transition that you've had. What were maybe the highlights or challenges that you experienced as you went from working with a large multinational company to then working with startups?
Right. One of the things is not over-analyzing things. So what you learn as an engineer, and what you also learn as a specialist in a company when you have a first job, but also then later on, that's applied a lot in a bigger corporate environment, is to be in control of things, to be part of a bigger organization, to follow procedures, etc., 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 etc. While in the startup environment, the key indicator for everything is speed, and not everything needs to be perfect. But you need to move quickly, you need to learn fast, you might fail, but then at least fail fast. And that whole approach, in terms of understanding that theoretically it's not that difficult, but to put it in practice on a day-to-day basis, it took me some time to make that adjustment.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else we should know, Eric, about HighTechXL or your journey, or how corporations and startups can work better together?
Yeah, well, one of the things is what we see is that what corporations get out of working with startups. Actually, there's quite a few professionals at the companies around us who also are mentor to the startups in our program. What we see a lot is that people really get inspired by working with startups. They get inspired doing business development without the procedures. They get inspired by people having wild ideas and then moving along, and after a couple of months really getting traction in the market. So that is a very, very important element. And what you see in that in corporations, sometimes because of the procedures, because of the meetings and all of that stuff, the joy of being part of something bigger might actually be underwhelmed by the procedures and stuff. So what you see is that inspiration, and that's also what we try to find in the corporate programs that we run, to ignite the inspiration in the teams and to actually get to the energy that's within everybody in general, to really make it something personal, I think is a key element of what corporations can learn from startups.
Oh, that's interesting. So again, there are cultural benefits that you get. Even if potentially that professional who's mentoring those startups, if that may not even turn into a product that they end up acquiring or partnering with or whatnot, they're going to get benefits just from the added energy and vigor that comes from being able to dip their toes in that startup pool for a little bit.
And what we do, on top of that as well, of course, we also work a lot with students, especially business students. They are always looking for opportunities to actually get assignments with real companies.
Sure.
Now, if they get an assignment from a startup, first of all, the startups get input. It's not put in a drawer. That might sometimes happen in a big corporation. When there's an assignment, an internship or whatever, that what's produced by the intern is actually, not really used. But in a startup, it's used. That makes it a lot more real. And also the learning, it's a lot more real. So business students really like that. So already this year we had at least 200 business students working for startups, helping them out with specific assignments. So that's also the kind of connection we make. Absolutely. What we also do is connect startups to the expat community here. There's about 10,000 expats in the city of Eindhoven, and the families of expats, the spouses of expats have a high education in most cases as well. And what you see is that if they want to move back to professional life, that while moving they might have dropped out of a bit, to work with startups is really something that they enjoy, and that helps with creating an international network as well. So what we're really doing here in this region is connect startups to companies, to the public organizations, the city, the province, nationally as well. We connect them to an international community here in the city, as well as to students, and all is based on a win-win situation. And actually, in most cases, no money is changing hands.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. That just the whole community gets a lot richer through that. What are some of who are some of the big Dutch companies and big Dutch startups that people maybe have heard of?
Well, there's actually quite a few startups here on site that have been acquired. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the coverage in the US about that. Mm-hmm. But Intel, for instance, is now here on site because they acquired Silicon Highs. Mm. Medtronic has moved to Eindhoven because they acquired Sapiens. Mm. That's deep brain implants for Parkinson's disease. So that's really very advanced medical technology there. Liquid Vista was acquired by Amazon, for instance. So Amazon is here in the city as well. That's screen technology, as maybe the name already indicates. So there's quite a few companies that are acquired by also US companies for a couple of $100 million.
Eric, if people want to learn more about you or HighTechXL or what's going on over there in Eindhoven, where can they find out more information?
Yeah, so HighTechXL.com is our web address. And what's also very good to mention is that We're about to open applications for our next program as well, which we plan to do the final selections in October this year, and then start the program in November. And it's open for international startups.
Great. Any industry vertical?
Not specifically. This program we really stick to the advanced technology hardware domain. We might actually do a vertical early 2017, but it's too early to announce that yet.
Alrighty then. We'll encourage listeners, if they know of any amazing high-tech, advanced technology or hardware startups, who could go up there and get in the land that Intel and Medtronic and Amazon and everybody are sniffing in, and get to work with great people like Eric on a great campus. Eric, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with us. We've really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that does it for another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Special thanks to our guests and sponsors and everyone who makes this podcast possible. Please let us know what you think. Head over to iTunes, give us a review, drop us a note at the IO Podcast on Twitter. We look forward to hearing from you. And in between then, go out and innovate.